Welcome to my channel. It began on a war-torn moon at the edge of the Galactic Council's forgotten frontier, where smoke and silence stretched across the horizon like a graveyard sky. The alien princess, Lysara of the Veilteach Dominion, stood in the high tower of her command citadel, watching the last battle unfold. The humans had refused surrender again. Their ships burned in the atmosphere, their soldiers scattered across the scarred plains, yet one still fought alone. Through the cracked visor of her field screen, she saw him. A single human soldier, barehanded, his armor shredded, his rifle broken in half. He faced her elite guard, 10 armored Veilted warriors bred for battle, each stronger, faster, deadlier. But he didn't flinch. He moved like fire, feral, relentless, unstoppable. Every strike he threw was raw wool made flesh. Lysara watched as he crushed one warrior's throat, ducked under a plasma blade, and slammed another into the dust. Her heart pounded, not in fear, but in awe. The creature they had called primitive was fighting gods and winning. Around her, her officers whispered in disbelief. "That's impossible," one said. "He should be dead already." But Lysara's golden eyes never left him. Something inside her shifted. She had been raised to believe humans were animals. Yet the animal below was teaching her what courage meant. When the dust cleared, the human stood over a pile of her fallen warriors, chest heaving, blood dripping down his arm. He didn't roar or boast. He just looked up, right at her tower, as if he could feel her watching. Their eyes met through layers of glass, light, and distance. For a moment, the galaxy fell away. In that instant, Lysara felt her heart betray everything she had been bred to protect. The sound of her own voice startled her when she whispered, "I wish he was mine." No one else heard. But from that moment on, her fate was sealed. When the guards dragged the broken human into the fortress hours later, she could not look away. Even chained, bruised, and bloodied, he met her gaze with the same defiance as before. The council interrogators demanded names, codes, fleets. He gave them silence. Every time they struck him, he smiled. The alien nobles called him Beast. Lysara called him Truth. Days passed and the whispers grew. The prisoner refused to break, refused to kneel. His will spread like wildfire through the alien ranks. Some feared him, others envied him, but Lysara began to visit in secret. She told herself it was curiosity, then strategy, but deep down she knew it was something else. "Why do you fight?" she asked him one night, her voice trembling. His reply was calm, almost gentle. "Because someone has to stand, even when it means standing alone." That answer haunted her. It was the kind of strength her people's empire had long forgotten. She brought him water, medicine, food, small rebellions that, if discovered, could cost her life. And when he looked at her, not as a princess but as a person, she felt alive for the first time. Yet outside the cell walls, war raged. The Galactic Council declared humanity's extinction. Armadas burned across human colonies. Lysara's father, the Emperor, demanded the prisoner's public execution as a symbol of Dominion power. But she couldn't let it happen. Not to him. Not to the one who showed her what honor truly meant. The night before the execution, she made her choice. Disabling the surveillance grids, she walked into his cell with a stolen plasma key. The human, battered but unbroken, stared in silence as the locks released. "Why are you doing this?" he asked. She hesitated, then whispered, "Because you made me see what we've become." Together they slipped through the shadows of the citadel, alarms flashing in the distance as ships prepared for the grand spectacle of his death. Soldiers caught sight of them. She fired first, not as a princess, but as a rebel. The human shielded her from blasts, throwing himself into fire without hesitation. The pair reached the hangar as explosions tore through the walls. Lysara overrode the defense grid, opening the launch gates. "There's a human base on the far ridge," she said. "Go!" But he didn't move. "Come with me," he said quietly. "You'll die here." Her breath caught. She had never been offered freedom before, only duty. And now, for the first time, she wanted to take it. The fortress guards burst in, hundreds strong. Plasma bolts rained around them. The human grabbed her arm, pulling her behind him, every move precise, every strike brutal. He fought like before, bare-handed, fearless, burning with that same impossible will. The alien soldiers hesitated. They had seen what one human could do, and that hesitation cost them everything. When the smoke cleared again, the floor was littered with fallen warriors. Lasara was trembling, not from fear, but from the enormity of what she had done. The man looked at her, blood running down his temple. "You're free now," he said, voice steady. "But freedom costs." Then, without warning, he pushed her into the escape shuttle and slammed the hatch shut. Through the glass, she saw him turn back toward the charging army, his figure swallowed by flame and chaos. The engines roared, and she screamed his name, but he was gone. Weeks later, the council broadcasted propaganda claiming the human was executed, his defiance erased. But Lasara knew better. Deep in the wastelands, human resistance signals flickered again. Reports spoke of a ghost, one man leading strikes against Dominion fleets, always vanishing before capture. She knew who it was. Her people called him the Hand of Earth. She called him the man who changed her soul. Standing before the council one last time, she defied her father's command and declared neutrality. The chamber erupted in outrage, but she no longer cared. Humanity had shown her something the galaxy couldn't destroy, the power of a single heart to change an empire. And so, while the stars burned with war, the legend of the human who fought alone, and the alien princess who betrayed her people for love, spread across the galaxy. Some called it treason, others called it destiny. But in every whisper, every retelling, one truth remained. Humanity could never be tamed. If you enjoyed this HFY sci-fi story, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to Sci-Fi Tales for more tales of humanity's courage, rebellion, and heart among the stars. The escape had only begun, but freedom was far from certain. The shuttle Lasara launched and tore through the stormy skies of the war moon, its hull shaking from plasma fire trailing close behind. The human pilot beside her, his name still unknown, kept one hand steady on the controls while the other gripped a blood-soaked bandage around his shoulder. Outside, alien fighters screamed past in pursuit, their blue energy trails slicing through the darkness like burning comets. Lasara's heart pounded louder than the engines. She had never felt fear like this, not on the battlefield, not even when she first saw him fight. He glanced at her for a second, his face calm despite the chaos. "Breathe," he said softly. "You're not dying today." And for a reason she couldn't explain, she believed him. The shuttle dove through the thick ash clouds, hiding them for a few seconds before emerging above the jagged ridges of the wasteland below. Beneath them, ruined cities lay silent, once home to millions of her people, now reduced to craters by the same war her empire had started. They landed hard on the ridge, metal screeching as the ship buried itself in rock. Smoke filled the cockpit, alarms blaring. Lasara coughed, unbuckling herself, and saw him already pulling open the emergency hatch. "They'll track us soon," he said. "We need distance." She followed him out into the cold night, the air thick with static from the planet's dying atmosphere. Lightning forked across the sky, illuminating the burned plains stretching to the horizon. For the first time in her life, the princess was walking through the aftermath of her empire's conquests, seeing, not hearing, what her father's victories had cost. The human stopped on a ridge and looked back at her, eyes reflecting the storm. "You've never been here before, have you?" She shook her head. "We were told the humans attacked first." He gave a low laugh. "They always say that." The silence that followed carried more weight than any argument could. Hours later, deep inside a ruined communications bunker, they found temporary refuge. Lasara tended to his wounds, her delicate hands shaking as she wrapped cloth over his burns. He didn't protest, just watched her quietly. "What's your name?" she finally asked. "Kane," he replied after a long pause. "Terran Defense Corps, or what's left of it." His tone was weary but proud. "And you?" She hesitated, unsure if she even deserved her title anymore. Lasara of the Veilth Dominion. The name sounded hollow now, like a ghost from a world she no longer claimed. He nodded. Then I guess we're both traitors now. The words stung, but there was a strange comfort in them too. For the first time, she wasn't defined by her crown or duty, only by the choice she'd made. By dawn, search drones were swarming the region. The pair moved through the wreckage of the ancient city, keeping low, their breath misting in the thin air. The ruins told stories of fire and loss. Children's toys buried under ash, shattered sculptures of alien kings, burned flags still fluttering faintly in the wind. Kane stopped at one broken wall and traced a symbol, an old human sigil scorched into the stone. They called this place Meridian, he said quietly. My unit fought here for 3 weeks. Lasara could barely speak. You fought here? Fought? He said, eyes cold. And watched it burn when your ships came. The shame in her chest was suffocating. She wanted to apologize, but the words felt useless. Instead, she said, I can help you reach the human command. There's a transport relay near the northern cliffs. My access codes still work if we can reach it alive. He looked at her, and for the first time since they met, a small spark of trust flickered in his eyes. Then we move. Their journey north took 2 days of silent endurance. They scavenged supplies from wrecked convoys, slept under the metallic glow of shattered moons, and avoided drone patrols that hummed like predators in the distance. Each night, Lasara caught herself watching him. How he never complained, how every movement was driven by purpose. He wasn't just surviving, he was fighting for something greater. Humanity had been crushed, yet this man carried their spirit like an unbroken flame. When she finally asked what kept him going, his answer was simple. Because somewhere, someone still believes we can win. The words filled her with a warmth she couldn't name. In her world, belief had been traded for control, loyalty for fear. But this was faith born of fire. On the 3rd night, as they camped beneath the remnants of a fallen orbital cannon, Lasara spoke the truth she had hidden since the night she freed him. They'll execute me if they find us. My father will send hunters. Kane didn't look surprised. He'll have to catch you first. She smiled faintly. You think you can protect me from an empire? He met her gaze. No, but I'll die trying. The words hung between them, sharp and real. The storm around them rumbled like a living thing, and for the first time, she felt what it meant to be human. Not by species, but by spirit. By the time they reached the northern cliffs, the Dominion fleet had already arrived. Battleships floated above the canyons like metal gods, casting shadows that swallowed the light. Kane's face hardened. They're blocking the relay. Lasara activated a small wrist console, scanning the terrain. There's one chance. The defense grid runs through the canyon below. If we overload it, the energy burst could blind their sensors long enough to escape. He raised a brow. That'll kill us both. She nodded. Only if we stay. Kane smirked. Then we'd better move fast. As they descended into the canyon, lightning struck the ridges, and the air hummed with raw power. Every step was a race against time, every breath a promise of death or freedom. Yet through it all, they moved together. No longer human and alien, soldier and princess, but 2 souls defying an empire. When they reached the core chamber, alarms began to wail. Lasara's hands flew over the console, entering codes faster than thought. 30 seconds, she said. Kane took position by the blast door, plasma rifle aimed at the corridor. Dominion soldiers flooded in, shouting heresy and treason, their armor gleaming blue in the electric light. Kane fired, each shot precise, deliberate. The countdown hit 10 seconds. Lasara turned, tears streaking her dirt-stained cheeks. Kane! He looked back just long enough to smile. For humanity, he said. And then the world exploded in light. When the smoke cleared, the canyon was silent. High above, Dominion ships drifted aimlessly, their sensors blinded. A single escape pod shot out from the wreckage, carrying one survivor, Lasara. Inside, her trembling hand clutched a charred dog tag engraved with one word, Kane. As the pod vanished into the void, she whispered to the stars, "You're not forgotten." The galaxy would one day call it the betrayal of Lasara, the moment a princess turned against her empire for a single human. But others, in secret, would remember it differently, as the day an alien heart learned what it meant to be human. The escape pod drifted through the void for what felt like eternity, silent except for the faint hum of life support and Lasara's shallow breathing. The stars outside looked cold and distant, their light cutting through the darkness like ancient witnesses to her betrayal. Her reflection stared back from the glass, no longer the polished, unshaken princess of the Galactic Dominion, but a fugitive marked by loss and guilt. Kane's dog tag rested in her palm, its edges blackened and cracked, the name barely visible. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw him, standing in that canyon, fighting off entire squadrons while she ran for her life. He had chosen death so she could live, and that truth was a weight she could not escape. "For humanity," he had said. Those words echoed inside her like a heartbeat, steady and painful. The pod's navigation system flickered to life, displaying a single blinking signal. Terran frequency detected, weak source. She leaned closer, her pulse racing. "It can't be," she whispered. The coordinates led her to a barren moon orbiting the shattered remains of a once thriving planet. Human ruins littered the surface, half buried under sand and stone. She guided the pod down through the thin atmosphere, landing near a wrecked communications tower. As the dust settled, Lasara stepped out, clutching a small transmitter. The wind howled across the empty plain, carrying the faint metallic scent of decay. "This is Princess Lasara of the Galactic Dominion," she said into the static. "I seek contact with any surviving human forces." For a long moment, there was only silence. Then, a voice, rough, human, and full of suspicion, crackled through the static. "You've got a lot of nerve using that name, alien." She froze. "I'm not your enemy," she said quickly. I freed one of your soldiers. He told me where to find you." The line went dead. Minutes passed before another voice returned, softer, older. "If you're telling the truth, stay where you are. But if this is a trap, your death will be quick." Hours later, figures emerged from the mist. Humans, armored and weary, their weapons raised but eyes sharp with both fear and defiance. The leader, a scarred woman with short gray hair, stepped forward. "You said you freed one of ours. What was his name?" Lasara hesitated, saying it felt like reopening a wound. "Kane," she whispered. The woman's expression faltered. "Kane Vale." Lasara nodded. The leader lowered her weapon slowly. "He saved my life once, years ago. You better have proof." Lasara held out the dog tag. The woman took it in trembling hands, staring at it as if it were holy. "He's gone." Lasara nodded again, tears burning her eyes. The soldiers exchanged glances, the hostility fading into something else. Respect, maybe even grief. "You better come with us," the leader said quietly. "You're not safe out here. None of us are." They led her into a hidden underground facility carved beneath the ruins, a labyrinth of tunnels lit by dim emergency lights. The air smelled of oil, rust, and desperation. Hundreds of survivors moved through the corridors. Engineers, doctors, soldiers, children. Humanity wasn't dead. It was enduring. "We call this place Bastion," the leader explained as they walked. "The last stronghold of free humans in this sector." Lasara looked around in awe. Despite the decay, there was life here, a defiant heartbeat in the dark. "You shouldn't have come," the woman continued. "If the Dominion finds you here, they'll raise this moon to ash." Lasara met her gaze. "Then we make sure they don't." Over the following days, Lasara shared everything she knew: fleet positions, Dominion weaknesses, encryption codes. The humans were cautious but curious. Their engineers studied her technology, reverse engineering weapons and communication relays. Slowly, trust began to grow. Lasara found herself working alongside them, learning how they fought, how they endured without the luxuries her people took for granted. She watched them share their rations, fix broken machines with scraps, and still laugh around the fires when night came. Humanity was flawed, fragile, and imperfect, but their strength wasn't born from control. It was born from hope. Every day, she saw Kane's spirit in their eyes. Then came the day the Council discovered Bastion. A massive Dominion fleet dropped out of warp above the moon, blotting out the stars with metallic dreadnoughts. The alarms wailed through the tunnels as soldiers scrambled to defense positions. "They've found us," the commander shouted. Lasara stood frozen, heart hammering. Her father's voice echoed through every Dominion broadcast, cold and merciless. "Return my daughter, and I will spare your world." The human commander glanced at her. "You're not his daughter anymore." Lasara swallowed hard. "Then let me prove it." She sprinted to the control deck, overriding the defense systems. "I can jam their targeting grid for 5 minutes," she said. "Enough time for your ships to launch a counterattack." The commander hesitated, then nodded. "Do it." Outside, the sky erupted with fire. Human fighters, patched together from wrecks and dreams, soared against the Dominion's overwhelming might. The ground shook as railguns thundered from the canyon walls. Lasara worked frantically, rerouting Dominion codes to scramble their fleet communications. "They can't coordinate," one human shouted. "They're blind." But the victory was short-lived. A massive energy spike tore through the radar feed, a superweapon charging from the Dominion flagship, aimed directly at Bastion. Lasara's blood ran cold. "That's the Emperor's Wrath cannon," she breathed. "One shot will vaporize everything." The commander turned to her. "Can you stop it?" Lasara's hands trembled. "No, but I can redirect it." Her fingers flew across the console. "If I link my signal beacon to their targeting core, it'll lock onto my coordinates instead." The humans realized what she meant. "You'll die," the commander said. Lasara smiled faintly. "Someone has to stand, even when it means standing alone." The same words Kane had once spoken. The cannon charged, its crimson glow filling the sky. Lasara stepped outside, the wind whipping through her hair as she walked onto the barren surface. She closed her eyes and lifted the beacon high, feeling the heat of the storm gathering above. "For humanity," she whispered. A blinding flash split the heavens, followed by silence. When the light faded, the Dominion flagship was gone, consumed by its own weapon. In the command bunker, the humans stared in stunned disbelief. "She did it," someone whispered. The commander looked toward the horizon where the blast had been. "She finished what he started." Weeks later, rumors spread across the galaxy. The Dominion had lost its princess, its flagship, and half its fleet. Rebellions ignited on dozens of worlds. The legend of the human warrior and the alien princess spread like wildfire. Two souls from opposite worlds who defied empires and rewrote destiny. On distant worlds, oppressed species began to whisper the same word humans once carried proudly. Hope. And far beyond the stars, in the quiet void between galaxies, a new signal flickered to life, human frequency, faint but growing stronger. A single transmission played through the static. "This is Captain Kane Vale. Humanity endures." Lasara's sacrifice had not been in vain. She had saved not only the humans, but the soul of a galaxy that had forgotten what it meant to fight for something greater than survival. The transmission spread across the void like a heartbeat reborn. "This is Captain Kane Vale. Humanity endures." Every surviving human outpost that caught the signal froze in disbelief. For weeks they had mourned him. For weeks his name had become legend. And now, his voice, weary but alive, spoke across the fractured channels of the war-torn galaxy. In Bastion, silence fell over the command chamber. Engineers stared at each other, unable to speak. Then, slowly, the room erupted in cheers. "He's alive!" someone shouted. The old commander wiped her eyes, laughing through tears. "He's alive," she whispered again, as if saying it would make it real. Above them, the night sky still glowed faintly from the wreckage of the Dominion fleet, the light of Lasara's sacrifice still visible as a burning scar on the horizon. Kane's signal was weak, distorted, but the message carried strength far beyond static and distance. Humanity wasn't defeated. Not yet. Kane's shuttle drifted among the wreckage of the Dominion flagship, its hull scorched and barely holding pressure. He had survived the blast by sheer chance or fate. His body ached with burns, his suit torn, oxygen levels critical. But he was alive. He dragged himself through the shattered corridors of the ruined ship, guided by the faint beacons of emergency lights. The Dominion's once great flagship now lay broken, its engines silent, its crew either dead or fled. Kane found himself standing in the Emperor's chamber, surrounded by shattered glass and smoldering banners. The floor was cracked, and through the fractures, he could see the cold stars beyond. In the center of the room, half buried in debris, was Lysara's personal pendant, the royal crest she always wore. He knelt, picking it up, his heart heavy. "You did it," he whispered. "You gave them a chance." The memory of her voice, her defiance, and her quiet strength filled his mind. He had seen soldiers fight and die with courage, but what she did went beyond duty. It was love turned into rebellion. He activated his suit's distress beacon, sending his coordinates to any nearby Terran frequencies. The signal reached Bastion within hours, and a recovery team was launched immediately. By the time they arrived, Kane was unconscious, clutching the pendant tightly. When he awoke days later in Bastion's medical wing, the room was quiet except for the soft hum of monitors. A nurse gasped as she saw him stir. "He's awake," she called. The commander rushed in, disbelief in her eyes. "You don't know how long we thought you were gone." Kane's voice was hoarse. "How long?" "3 weeks," she said softly. "And Lysara?" He didn't need the answer. Her silence was enough. Kane turned away, gripping the pendant in his palm. The pain wasn't just grief, it was understanding. She had given him something no one else could, a reason to keep fighting, not just for victory, but for the idea that even enemies could find humanity in one another. Over the next months, the tide of the war shifted. The Dominion was fractured by internal strife. Half the nobles questioned the Emperor's decisions after the loss of his daughter and flagship. Rebellions erupted in outer colonies. Entire fleets defected or went silent. The Galactic Council, long indifferent to the Terran struggle, began to realize that humanity was no longer the prey. It was the spark of something unstoppable. Kane took command of the unified Terran resistance fleet, now bolstered by volunteers from alien species who had once served under the Dominion's rule. They came not for conquest, but for freedom. "If the humans can defy gods," one alien commander said, "so can we." Kane stood on the bridge of the rebuilt flagship Soul's Wrath, looking out over a fleet that had once seemed impossible. Hundreds of ships, patched together, refitted from captured vessels, stood ready. The stars outside seemed brighter than ever. His second-in-command approached. "Sir, Dominion fleets are massing at the Epsilon Gate. They're preparing a full offensive." Kane nodded. "Then we meet them head-on." His voice carried the same iron resolve that had once inspired Lysara. "No retreats, no surrender. We fight for every world they've burned." The order echoed through the ships. Engines roared to life, and for the first time in years, humanity wasn't running. It was advancing. When the two armadas met at the Epsilon Gate, the battle was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Plasma fire lit the void like a second sun. The Dominion's dreadnoughts unleashed their wrath, tearing through space with blinding power, but the Terran fleet fought with precision and fury. Kane's voice guided them through the chaos. "Target their command relays. Cut their coordination. Make them blind." Ship by ship, the Dominion line began to crumble. For every Terran vessel lost, 3 of theirs fell. The radio was filled with the cries of soldiers, human and alien alike, fighting side by side. One by one, Dominion ships began to break formation and flee. But the Emperor's flagship, the Veil Th Eternal, remained. Kane locked onto it, rage and purpose burning in his chest. "That's the one," he said. "End this." The fleet cleared a path as the Soul's Wrath charged forward. The 2 flagships collided in orbit above a dying sun, exchanging fire at point-blank range. The decks shook, Alarms screamed, but Kane didn't stop. "All batteries, focus fire," he shouted. The main cannons roared, tearing through the enemy's shields. Inside the Voltage Eternal, the Emperor himself watched the battle unfold from his throne, his face pale but proud. "So this is humanity," he muttered. "My daughter died for this." His eyes hardened. "Then so shall he." The ship's main weapon charged, a lance of energy capable of vaporizing planets. Kane saw it building and knew there was no time to escape. "Divert all power to shields," he ordered. "We're not backing down." The blast hit like a god's hammer, shaking every atom of the ship. Systems failed, alarms screamed, and the bridge was engulfed in light. When the smoke cleared, Kane was still standing, gripping the railing, his uniform burned, his vision fading. But the Voltage Eternal was breaking apart. "Fire!" he whispered. The Soul's Wrath's final salvo pierced the enemy ship's core, igniting a chain reaction that tore it in half. The Emperor's last transmission echoed through the comms. "Perhaps my daughter was right." Then silence. The war ended not with surrender, but with exhaustion. The Dominion fractured, its fleets disbanding. The Galactic Council called for peace talks for the first time in centuries. Kane attended as the representative of the newly formed Terran Alliance. The chamber was vast, filled with delegates from every surviving world. As he walked to the podium, all eyes turned to him, not as a soldier, but as the symbol of what humanity had become. "We were told we were monsters," he began, his voice calm but steady. "That humans were violent, unpredictable, unworthy of peace. Maybe they were right about one thing: we are violent when forced to be. We fight when there's no other choice. But not for power, not for empire. We fight so no one else has to kneel again." The hall fell silent. For the first time in living memory, the galaxy listened. At the end of the session, Kane placed Lysara's pendant on the council's central dais. This belonged to someone who believed that even enemies could find humanity in one another. Let her memory be the start of something better. The gesture echoed through history. Generations later, children would learn her name and his as the two who defied empires for the sake of compassion. That night, Kane stood alone on the observation deck of his ship, staring out at the stars. "You were right," he murmured. "Freedom costs, but it was worth it." He closed his eyes, hearing her voice in the wind of memory. Somewhere in that endless expanse, he hoped she had found peace. And thus, the legend of the human who fought alone and the princess who betrayed her people became more than a story. It became the foundation of a new age. Years passed, and peace became something the galaxy had almost forgotten how to recognize. The great fires of the Dominion Wars had cooled into embers, their ruins drifting quietly in the void as ghostly reminders of the cost of pride and vengeance. The Terran Alliance, born from desperation and courage, now stood as one of the dominant powers of the new Galactic Accord. But victory had not come without scars. Entire worlds lay shattered, species scattered and broken, and countless lives had been spent to build the fragile truce now holding the stars together. Admiral Kane Vale, once the lone soldier who defied an empire, had become a symbol of unity. To some, he was a hero, to others, a myth. But inside, he remained haunted by one memory: the sound of her voice, whispering through the chaos, "For humanity." Those words never left him. Every council meeting, every speech, every alliance he forged felt incomplete, because Lysara wasn't there to see what her sacrifice had built. Kane stood aboard the Soul's Wrath, now rebuilt and gleaming under the flag of the new Terran Accord. From its massive observation deck, he watched fleets of mixed species moving in formation, human ships flying beside Voltage cruisers, once enemies now allies. The galaxy was healing slowly, yet beneath that fragile peace, currents of unrest stirred. Some Dominion hardliners still believed the old ways should return. Others, within the Terran Alliance itself, whispered that peace had made humanity weak. Kane had seen enough of both war and peace to know that neither was pure. He carried the pendant, the same one Lysara left behind, around his neck, hidden beneath his uniform. To him, it wasn't just a reminder of her. It was a promise. that humanity's rise would not become another empire's cruelty. One quiet night, as the fleet drifted near the ruins of the Epsilon Gate, Kane felt a faint tremor through the ship. "Admiral, we're picking up a transmission," his communications officer said, brow furrowed. "It's encrypted Old Dominion code, but altered." Kane's heart tightened. "Play it." Static filled the bridge, followed by a weak, almost ghostly voice. "To the one who still carries my name, seek the world that burns blue." The room fell silent. Kane froze. Couldn't be. The encryption signature wasn't just Dominion. It was Lysara's personal cipher. "Origin?" he demanded. "Unknown," the officer said. "Signal bouncing through multiple relay satellites. But it's real, sir. And recent." Kane gripped the railing, staring at the stars. For years he had buried hope under duty, but this stirred something deeper than logic. "Set course for the blue world," he ordered. His crew exchanged uncertain looks. "Sir, that's a dead system," one officer said. "There's nothing there." Kane turned, eyes cold and certain. "Then we'll make sure." The engines roared to life, and the soul's wrath cut through the darkness once more, following the ghost of a voice that should have been long gone. After 2 weeks of travel, they arrived in the uncharted system the Dominion once called Varella's Echo. The main planet glowed with a haunting blue hue, its surface cloaked in storms of ionized gas. The readings were unstable. Massive energy signatures pulsed beneath the crust, like a living heartbeat. "Looks like a failed terraforming project," the science officer said. "But there's something active underground. Power levels are ancient, thousands of years old." Kane's instincts told him this wasn't chance. "Prepare a landing team," he ordered. As the shuttle descended through the thick clouds, lightning illuminated vast metallic structures buried beneath glass-like ice. The architecture was alien, but not Dominion, not human. It was older. They touched down near a massive gate of blue crystal, half buried in ice, humming faintly with power. Strange runes glowed along its surface, shifting when Kane approached. "This isn't just a ruin," the scientist murmured. "It's responding to you." Kane placed his hand on the structure, and the symbols flared, recognizing the genetic code of both human and Veilteach ancestry. The air crackled, and the gate opened. Inside was a vast chamber filled with stasis pods, each glowing with the same eerie blue light. His breath caught. In the center of the room, one pod was different, larger, golden, and pulsing weakly. The scanner beeped. "Life signs detected," the medic said in disbelief. Kane moved closer, wiping frost from the glass. And there she was, Lysara. Time seemed to stop. She looked exactly as he remembered. Her white hair flowing like silk, her face serene, her body suspended in a field of shimmering energy. "No," he whispered. "It can't be." The scientists scrambled to analyze the readings. "It's some kind of preservation matrix," one said. "Dominion biotech mixed with unknown technology. She's alive, Admiral. Barely, but alive." Kane's knees nearly gave out. After all these years, after every battle, every loss, she was here. "Can we wake her?" he asked. "We can try, but it could kill her," the medic warned. "The stasis field is integrated with her neural pattern. If we disconnect it wrong..." Kane didn't hesitate. "Do it." The room filled with blinding light as the pod hissed open, releasing a gust of freezing vapor. Lysara gasped, her eyes snapping open. Those golden eyes that once saw through fire and smoke. She looked around, disoriented, until her gaze found him. For a moment, neither spoke. Then, in a trembling voice, she whispered, "Kane." He stepped closer, unable to hide the tears that had waited decades to fall. "It's me." She reached for him weakly, her hand shaking. "You came back." He caught her hand and pressed it to his chest. "You never left me." Lysara was frail, her body weak from stasis, but her spirit remained unbroken. Over the next few days, she recovered slowly aboard the Soul's Wrath. The crew watched her with awe. Many had grown up hearing stories of the Princess of Betrayal. She, however, spoke little. When she finally regained her strength, She asked Kane to walk with her to the observation deck. They stood before the endless stars, the silence between them heavy with everything unspoken. "I saw it," she said softly. "Before the light took me. The cannon fired, but someone, pulled me into that stasis chamber. I thought I was dead." Kane nodded. "You saved them all, Lasara. The humans, the worlds you never knew. You ended the war." Her eyes shimmered. "And yet, the galaxy still fights." He sighed, leaning on the railing. "Peace is never permanent. It's just time bought by the ones who refuse to surrender." She looked at him, smiling faintly. "You sound like me now." He chuckled quietly. "Maybe you rubbed off on me." The moment was quiet, fragile, and eternal. She reached out, touching the pendant around his neck. "You kept it." He nodded. "It was all I had left." Tears welled in her eyes. "You shouldn't have come for me." He looked at her with that same fire she remembered. "I didn't come because I had to. I came because I couldn't live knowing you were gone." But fate was not done with them. Unknown to either, the awakening of the stasis chamber sent out a pulse across the galaxy, a beacon that reached remnants of the Dominion still loyal to the old Emperor. In hidden systems, fleets stirred. The lost daughter had returned, and to them that meant one thing: the bloodline of Valtich must be reclaimed. Within days, reports began flooding in of Dominion warships regrouping under a new banner, the Rebirth Crusade. Kane knew what it meant. Another war was coming. But this time it would not be fought between humans and aliens. It would be fought for the soul of the new galaxy. He turned to Lasara as alarms began to sound across the fleet. "They're coming for you," he said. She didn't flinch. "Then let them come. This time, they'll face both of us." And as the stars once again filled with the glow of oncoming war, two figures, one human, one alien, bound by love and destiny, stood side by side, ready to face the storm they had both created and survived. The stars trembled once again as the old Dominion banners reappeared, dark, metallic, and burning with vengeance. Across the galaxy, faint transmissions spread like a contagion. "The blood of Valtich still lives. The true empire will rise again." Kane listened from the command bridge of the Soul's Wrath, watching as hundreds of red-coated ships blinked into existence on long-range scans. The Rebirth Crusade had begun. Lasara stood beside him, her reflection caught in the viewport's glow, her golden eyes calm yet shadowed by guilt. "They're not coming for humanity," she said quietly. "They're coming for me." Kane turned to her. "Then they'll have to go through every world that calls itself free." But she shook her head. "You don't understand. The Valtich don't see this as war. They see it as restoration. To them, I'm not their princess anymore. I'm a symbol of betrayal that must be erased." Her voice trembled. "They'll burn entire systems to prove it." Kane's hand tightened on the railing. "Then we stop them before they begin." The fleet mobilized. Humans, Valtich defectors, and dozens of other species united under one banner, the Terran Accord. The stars blazed with movement, carriers and destroyers warping across sectors, preparing for the largest battle since the end of the war. But this time, there was no clear enemy line, no single empire to destroy. The Rebirth Crusade was fragmented, fanatics and admirals, scattered warlords, each convinced they carried the Emperor's will. They struck without warning, raiding colonies, capturing outposts, spreading fear. And yet each attack had a pattern. They were searching for something, or someone. Kane knew it was Lasara. She watched every report, every burning planet, her expression unreadable. "You don't have to carry this alone," he told her one night in the war room. She turned to him, voice cold but pained. "I started this, Kane. My bloodline gave them the reason." He stepped closer. "No, your bloodline gave the galaxy hope. They twisted it. Don't let them take that from you." Their first engagement came near the Arcus Nebula, a swirling mass of ion storms and broken stations. The Rebirth fleet appeared out of warp, their ships black and jagged, built from scavenged Dominion wrecks. Kane ordered full engagement. The battle was chaos. Fighters diving through lightning clouds, massive cruisers tearing each other apart. Lasara coordinated from the command deck, her voice calm amid the madness. Pull shield arrays from Sector 9. Redirect to lower decks, she commanded. The bridge crew followed instantly. Every move she made was precise, her instincts honed from years of royal training. The Terran forces pushed forward, turning the tide. But then came the flagship, the Galactic Ascendant. It emerged from the storm like a nightmare, its hull adorned with the Old Dominion crest and glowing crimson lines of corrupted energy. A voice boomed over the comms, deep and venomous. Lasara Galactic, your throne awaits you in chains. Lasara froze, recognizing the voice. Admiral Theros, her father's most loyal commander. He had been presumed dead in the last war, but now his face appeared on the holographic display, scarred and metallic, half machine, half monster. You destroyed our empire, he growled. You sided with the vermin who defiled our worlds. You spat on your blood. Now I'll cleanse what's left of your stain. Kane stepped into view. Funny. For a dead man you talk too much. Theros sneered. Ah, the human beast. The animal that corrupted her. Fitting that you die together. His fleet opened fire. Energy beams ripped through the Terran formation, tearing ships apart. Kane shouted orders, the soul's wrath rolling through the chaos. Target the Ascendant's reactor core. Fire on my mark. The cannons roared, beams colliding with shields in brilliant flashes. The battle raged for hours, each side refusing to yield. Finally, the Theros transmitted one last message. If I can't have her, no one will. The Ascendant began to charge a self-destruct cascade large enough to consume the entire nebula. Lasara's voice was sharp. He's going to detonate the core. Kane didn't hesitate. Lock coordinates, helm. Take us straight in. The crew stared. Sir, that's suicide. So was standing alone, he said grimly. The soul's wrath dove toward the burning flagship, dodging wreckage and plasma storms. Prepare for boarding, Kane ordered. We end this ourselves. The hangar bay slammed open, and Kane led the assault team into the heart of the enemy ship. Fire and smoke filled every corridor. Lasara followed close behind, wielding a plasma staff, her movements precise and deadly. They fought through waves of soldiers until they reached the reactor chamber, where the Theros awaited them, his mechanical form towering under the flickering light. So the traitor comes home, he hissed. Lasara stepped forward. This ends today. He laughed. You can't kill what your empire made. He swung a massive blade of energy, the impact shaking the chamber. Kane blocked it with his rifle, sparks flying. You talk too much for a corpse, he growled, firing point-blank into Theros's chest. The Admiral staggered, but his cybernetic limbs absorbed most of the blast. He hurled Kane across the room. Lasara lunged, striking fast and fierce, her staff slicing through circuits and armor. The Theros roared, grabbing her by the throat. You were meant to rule the stars, not kneel before beasts. She gasped, her vision dimming. Then Kane, bloodied but alive, rose behind him. She didn't kneel, he said, voice raw. She stood taller than you ever did. He drove a plasma blade through Theros's back, the light flaring as the Admiral's body convulsed. For humanity, Kane whispered. For her people, Lasara added. Together, they pushed him into the reactor core, the explosion blinding. They barely escaped, the soul's wrath pulling away as the Galactic Ascendant exploded behind them, its shockwave lighting the entire nebula. The crew erupted in cheers, but Kane and Lasara stood silently on the bridge, watching the fire fade. It's over, he said quietly. She shook her head. No, not yet. There will always be another Theros. Another zealot who thinks bloodlines decide destiny. Kane turned to her, his expression soft but determined. Then we'll keep proving them wrong. Weeks later, at the newly established Galactic Summit, Lasara stood before leaders of every race. Her voice carried across the chamber, clear and steady. The galaxy was divided because we believed strength meant domination. Humanity taught me it means endurance, the power to rise, not rule. She paused, looking toward Kane. I once fought to protect an empire. Now, I fight to protect what's left of our souls. The hall fell silent, then erupted in applause. The Veilteach delegation, long silent, rose to their feet. The words of the Princess of Betrayal became the foundation of the Accord of Unity, a pact that ended the Age of Empires. That night, Kane and Lysara stood together on the balcony of the summit station, watching the galaxies spin below them. You know, Kane said softly, I used to think peace was just the space between wars. She smiled. And now, he looked at her, eyes warm. Now I think peace is standing here with you. She leaned her head against his shoulder, the two of them silent as the stars burned quietly beyond. For once, the galaxy wasn't roaring with guns or screams. For once, there was peace. But deep in the darkness of uncharted space, a faint transmission pulsed, a fragment of Theros's dying systems whispering to something ancient, something waiting. The traitor lives. The cycle is not done. And far beyond the edge of known space, something vast began to stir. If you enjoyed this story, like, comment, and subscribe to Sci-Fi Tales for more epic HFY tales of humanity's courage, sacrifice, and power among the stars.